Welcome. It is a little after 3, and the other 2 board members, which I'll address in a moment, are not here, so we have the 3 that will be here, so I will call the meeting to order. I'm going to read a prepared statement, and then we'll begin with the meeting. The Board of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial board appointed by the mayor and the city council. The board is a part of the city administration and is governed by both the city and state codes and ordinances. The board is made up of 5 members. The chair, myself, cannot make a motion but has a vote. There must be 3 affirmative votes to pass. No motion made by the board will be the same as denial. If all 5 members are not present, petitioners have the right to ask for their case to be tabled until the next scheduled meeting, but there is no guarantee of a full board the following months. The board is empowered to vary the regulations of the zoning ordinance in harmony with its general purpose and intent, where the board makes a finding of fact that there are practical difficulties or unnecessary hardships that may prevent carrying out the literal provisions of the ordinance. The board also reviews conditional use requests and considers the following. Is the requested use consistent with the intent and purpose of the ordinance and with the comprehensive plan? Will the use have a substantial adverse effect upon adjacent property and the character of the neighborhood? And will the proposed use be compatible with the immediate neighborhood? The board also reviews variance requests. A variance request should only be granted if the petitioner establishes that an unnecessary hardship will result if the zoning regulations are enforced. There are 7 criteria for actions on a variance, which are addressed in the application. A general rule of thumb is that the variance should prevent a hardship and not grant a special privilege not available to other landowners in a similar situation. Unnecessary hardship means the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return if used only for the purpose allowed in that zone. The issue in question is due to unique circumstances and not central conditions of the neighborhood. The hardship must not be self-created, and the use authorized by the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality. As a board of the city, all testimony is welcome. Decisions are based on the facts and evidence allowed under the city code. I will introduce your case, and the city staff will provide details regarding the request. The petitioner will then be asked to come forward to this podium over here and state your name and address into the microphone for the record. If the proceedings become lengthy, testimony may be limited by me to new facts or evidence not already presented. Objectors will then have an opportunity to also address the board. They will also come forward and state their name and address for the record and state their objections or concerns. I will then call for any board questions or discussions. Final summaries and additional comments may then take place. Based on a motion and a second, I will call for a vote. If your variance or conditional use is approved, please understand that you may still have to comply with other regulations and codes, such as applicable building codes. Please visit with the Development Services Department official for any clarifications. Today, there are 3 board members present. We have a quorum, but if anyone on the agenda would like to remove their case and table it to the next meeting where there may be more than 3, do so now. And I'll just remind everyone that it takes 3 votes to approve something. So that is up to anyone on the agenda.
I believe it's 2. Is it 2?
Okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry, what?
It takes 2 to approve today, the majority of the present members.
Yeah. Okay.
But still.
All right, seeing none, we will begin with the first case. Before we begin, I'll have Danny call the roll, and we'll look at the minutes.
Thank you. Todd Barker.
Here.
Sue Lauder.
Here.
Bill Vernon.
Here.
Nancy is gone, and Jim is gone.
Thank you. Any motion or corrections on the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I have reviewed the minutes of the December meeting, and subject to the one change that I had noted below regarding the disposition of the votes, I move for approval of the December meeting.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. Our first case is a conditional use request to operate a commercial daycare center in a single-family R3 zone district at 4420 Centerpoint Road Northeast. This is the site of St. Andrew's Evangelical Lutheran Church. The applicant is proposing to run a daycare center from a portion of the building. The total site is a little under 3 acres. The church is over 12,000 square foot. The daycare would only take about 1,725 square foot of the building. They are providing more than adequate required parking. The future land use map is designating this area as urban medium intensity, so this use falls within that range. We can see from the zoning map, up and down, this is a commercial and office service along Centerpoint Road, with the exception of this church, which is R1. And then as we move to the east, we get into single-family neighborhoods. And this site has access from both the east and the west. This is just what the site looks like from Centerpoint Road, and then looking back west from Walker Street. And here they're showing the footprint and layout and those areas that they would occupy. And the only exterior change would be the addition of a playground on the west side here. And this has been reviewed by the City Planning Commission and recommended for approval unanimously. And with that, I'll turn it back to the board.
Thank you. Is the petitioner present? If you would come forward to the podium here and state your name and address into the microphone for the record, please.
My name is Amanda Skolik. My address is 524 20th Street Northeast. I am the architect for the Robin's Nest. I have no additional evidence to present.
Any questions from the board?
Any objectors?
Are there any objectors present?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that conditional use 024175-2016 be granted.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Did you want me to stay here?
I'm fine. Unless you're next, if you just want to stay. It doesn't matter. Good afternoon, Kirsty Sanchez with Development Services. Today we have a request for a conditional use as requested by PRG Group for property located at 1030 Old Marion Road Northeast. Here we have a map showing the aerial image of the property, and they're also in the process of trying to rezone a portion of the property to office service. So what we're looking at today is this area here in red. And the conditional use request is to allow for the construction of 50 self-service storage units in the proposed office service district. They'll be providing 4 parking spaces, and the total building area is 11,000 square feet. And the property is identified as urban medium intensity on the future land use map. Here you can see that the property is surrounded by single-family, community, commercial, and office service districts. And then here's a view of the property from Old Marion Road Northeast. And then here's their site plan. Again, that's 50 self-service storage units, 4 parking spaces. And then here we have some renderings for the project. And it does meet our commercial design requirements as well as additional requirements that we have for self-service storage units in the office service district. And as I mentioned, they're in the process of going through rezoning. So tomorrow we have a motion setting a city council public hearing, and that public hearing will be held on February 28th. And then on March 14th, we'll have the second and possible third readings of the ordinance. And I did just want to note that the conditional use would be contingent upon successful rezoning. So that's all I have, and I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Is the petitioner present?
Doug Brain, 1540 Midland Court, Northeast Cedar Rapids. I am the engineer for the project. I guess the only thing I'll add too is there's an existing car wash, and that car wash will get converted into storage garages also, and that's part of that 50 units.
Any questions for the petitioner?
No issue on the parking. I mean, probably 60% of the required amount, but that's not an issue.
They actually meet the parking requirement. They're only required to provide for,
Before there was an ordinance change, I guess, and we didn't find that out until afterwards because we were going to get a variance for the parking, but I guess the ordinance already changed before.
yes, I'm guessing you're looking at the City Planning Commission staff report. We noticed that after the staff report had been sent out, so they are meeting the parking requirement. Today, we're just considering them, sorry, that I should have mentioned that. Today, we're just considering them for the conditional use.
Are there any objectors present? There are none. Any further discussion or questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve conditional use 024229-2016, subject to the rezoning approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same side. Motion carries. Whenever you're ready with the next.
Okay, our final conditional use request. This is a minor revision to a conditional use for a contractor's shop in the C3 zoning district at 5325 18th Avenue Southwest. Let's see, this was previously approved as the existing building and the addition of two larger buildings. And since that time, nothing has proceeded, and they've now changed the plan. So the plan that they're asking you to approve today is actually just an addition onto the existing building, and the rest of the lot would remain undeveloped. So we deem this to just be a minor revision since it's a reduction in the overall development. So this hasn't gone back to Planning Commission. It's just coming back to you. And we're recommending approval with the same conditions that were recommended for approval the previous round. So with that, I'll turn it back to the board.
Thank you. Is the petitioner present?
Doug Brain, 1540 Midland Court, Cedar Rapids. Yeah, the owner originally wanted to have two contractor shops to lease out. Then he reevaluated what he needs, and he wants to extend his shop. So he's just adding on to his building and not adding contractor shops, additional ones that he would lease out. And so scaling back from the original plan.
What, if any, additional building does the owner anticipate trying to do in the future, if any?
Right, I don't think he knows for sure right now in the future, but I think in the future we'll still have to come back and go through the planning process.
Any other questions from the board for the petitioner?
Three conditions are acceptable to the applicant.
Yes.
Are there any objectors present? There are none. Any other discussion or comments?
Yep. Mr. Chairman, I would move that conditional use 024352-2017 be granted, subject to the three conditions.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a variance, variance 024262-2017. Dina Newer is the applicant, and Stephen and Mary Newer are the property owners. I believe Dina has power of attorney to act on behalf of the property owners for property at 119 24th or 34th Street Southeast. This property is zoned R3 Single Family Residential. This is a location map showing the location of the site on 34th, just south of Spoon Creek Cork and Cottage Grove Avenue. The appellant is requesting approval for a reduced front yard setback for an accessory structure, a new garage. As I mentioned, the property is zoned R1, which requires a 30-foot front yard setback. The total proposed garage area would be just under 600 square feet, about a 2-stall garage. They're looking at going up to 3 foot, and that should be 5 inches from the property line. This is an aerial photo showing the site, and I included this just to show some of the challenges topographically for this property. The house is located at this location. There's a small garage here with access off 34th Street, and the new garage would be down in this area. There's like a creek that runs through here and a lot of vegetation on the back side of the lot, and that's why they're wanting to try and move the garage closer to the streets to lessen the impact on having to add fill, and take out trees. This is just an aerial photo. You can see the kind of where the creek low-lying area is back here, and the new garage would sit in this area. This is the option that the applicant would like to go with a garage angled at this location, and the entrance would be here. They would have to do minimal paving with this option. They provided some other options which we've included in your packet to get that garage turned a little bit more without still meeting the setback. And then this is the last option that they provided, which does provide about a 20-foot setback. They still can't meet the 30 because even the original house doesn't meet that. Otherwise, they'd be back into an area where they just wouldn't be able to make it work. But with this option, they'd have to add significantly more paving and actually take out more trees and potentially have to do some filling to get this up, in an area that makes it acceptable for usage. That's all I have at this point. Staff has had this reviewed by the Traffic Engineering Department, and they didn't have any problem with the 1 foot 5 inch setback. And with that, I'd turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you. Is the petitioner present? If you would come forward and state your name and address for the record, please.
Deanna Nuri, 1609 Wildwood Drive, Northeast.
And what would you care to add to the case?
Just basically, our big concern is losing all the trees, because the further we sweep closer to the house, we're going to take out like at least 6 trees by the time we would get to that point, 6 big mature trees. Where if we can keep it more at that diagonal look, and we're not going to do the bump out that shows on that blueprint also. But the reason we're willing to go is that takes the least amount of cement, the least amount of fill, the least amount of tree destruction.
Could you just clarify which option were you intending to go with? Because there's several here.
There's 4 options there, and we would prefer option 2 or 3.
Is this one 2 or 3? Can you tell?
I believe this was the first option, and that's what we based the 1 foot.
That's the first one.
And then I didn't,
2 is like, okay, each option has just a little bit more variance. Like the first one's only got 1 foot 5 inches. The next one has 5 foot 3 and 3/8 inches. The next one has 10 foot 2 1/8 inches, And the last one then is diagonal to the garage itself.
So just to be clear, the variance that we have proposed in front of us in the wording is the number 1 here with the 1 foot 5 inch,
Correct.
okay, setback.
But you could, if the board wanted to, approve the variance at a greater setback, if that's what you'd prefer to do.
We just figured that you probably wouldn't give us the first one, but we just wanted to include it, so.
But it doesn't hurt to ask.
Right, right.
A couple things. Will the existing garage remain in place?
Yes.
Okay, and then the packet was so long this week, I didn't get a chance to drive by this one. What is it, how does it look like? Are there other houses in this neighborhood
There's
that
a house
have
to the
similar?
north. No, there's a house to the north that has a or a two-car garage hooked onto the house. But he would not even see the garage because of the trees and stuff. There's a house behind, but in the summertime, he would not be able to see it either due to trees. And then we talked to neighbors across, and they said they had no problem because my brother had just done a bunch of work on the house and updated, and they thought he did a wonderful job on that, and they said they were sure he would be fine.
Yeah, this location map kind of shows the location of the property and the other houses. The house to the north would be on the opposite end of where they would put their garage. And then the house here, this is the former Arthur Collins house that sits way back up on the hill. So they're a considerable distance from where
Yeah,
that
and that
garage
would
would be.
definitely not show at all.
Any more questions for the petitioner before we?
Going back to your option, where is the entrance to the garage? Is that going to be onto the concrete?
Yeah, it'd be right, well, depending on what view, but it's gonna be right on the concrete,
Yeah.
as close to the concrete as we can get.
That'll be the door.
Right.
Yeah, the garage door would be on the northerly end of the building, where the driveways, they'd be able to come in and
And are
out.
there trees, did you say, along the property line?
Yes, I've got some pictures, but they're just, there's all kinds of trees. The further we swing the garage, the more big trees go out. First one takes no trees, the second one takes 1 tree, and then after that, it's more and more trees, up to 5 trees.
So this new 2-stall garage will have a separate entry than this existing one?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I mean,
It'll
you'll
have
the
the-
same driveway.
It'll have the same driveway. They'll
Okay.
just come in and then they'll
Sure.
be angled. The door
Okay.
would be right here.
What's the reason for 2 garages?
He wants to eventually make part of the 2-car garage into a part of the house. And so, but that's way down the road, but he's just looking into the future, I guess. But plus we have, he has 2 cars and I have a truck that we're gonna park over there because he uses it more than I do.
So part of the existing 2-stall garage may be converted into part of the living space? Okay.
Eventually.
It's not going to be used for any business purpose.
No.
And that would be a condition of the approval, is that it could be only used for the residential use on the property.
Are there any objectors present? There are none. Any other questions or comments from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that variance 024262-2017 be granted because of unique circumstances and consistent with the area, compatible with the area.
Do you want to clarify on the feet back or which option?
The first option, or further than the distance.
Yeah, you could go with the 1.5 inches, and if they decided to go with one of the other options, they would be okay to do that then.
Right, can't be used in the.
Yeah, it couldn't be-
Commercial.
Right, it
But
could-
that's a condition. It's across the board of any variance granted in this scenario.
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
Motion to the second of the approving the variance as drafted. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Okay, our next variance request concerns fence height within a required front yard setback at 3135 J Street Southwest. This is a proposal to develop more self-storage, and this was rezoned in 2014. Since that time, they've acquired some additional lots to the north, and there's a preliminary site plan that will be going to the Planning Commission on February 23rd. And then there's a future plan to expand into the northerly area, and that will require rezoning before that can happen. But this is an aerial view of the property. And this is a fairly steep site. I think it has over 50 feet of fall from north to south. So therefore, the development is going to be kind of located at the south end of the site, and that's the reasoning for asking for a variance. They're keeping buffer area and green space to the north against the other residential properties. So we have a double frontage lot here, and the security fencing would get into the front yard on the east side here. They've provided some renderings. We don't have renderings of the fence, but this is what the building should look like. And we've received no objections, and staff would recommend approval. And with that, I'll turn it back to the board.
Thank you. Is the petitioner present? If you could state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, Jim Schmidt, 185 Morgan Court, Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
And what would you care to add to the case?
Really, the only thing we would like to add is just that the fencing that we're going to be putting in is going to be decorative wrought iron, so it'll be see-through fencing. We actually want to do something that looks very, very nice for the area.
And I think you said this, but it would be see-through, not, okay.
It's not a solid.
Okay.
That's not the only solid fence I think is a privacy fence up by the residential side.
Any additional questions for the applicant?
Dave, where is the fence going from the,
On this slide, it's this line with circles, so it kind of wraps around the building here. I believe there's a gate across the drive down in this corner,
One down, there's one up above.
and then another gate here. So.
Are there any objectors present? There are none. Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve variance 024318-2017, citing not detrimental.
second?
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
All right, we have a request for a variance from our front setback requirements as requested by the Willis Dady Emergency Shelter over at 1247 4th Avenue Southeast. Here we have an aerial map of the parcel. And the request for the variance is to allow for the construction of an addition to the shelter, and they're proposing a 15-foot front setback in lieu of the 25-foot required setback. At the time that the building was constructed about 30 years ago, the property was zoned as office service, and the office service district doesn't have front setbacks. But then we updated our zoning code, and so the use became a legal non-conforming use. And they are now coming and wanting to do this addition to the property. But in doing that, they had to rezone the property to residential multifamily. So that's where the required 25-foot setback requirement comes in. Staff does not have any objections to this variance request. And then here's a view of the property from 4th Avenue Southeast, and that's the existing shelter. And here's the zoning map for the property. It's surrounded by multifamily and office service and single-family uses. And then here's their site plan. And then on this next slide, they've actually shown what their required setback is. So the required setback here is the red line, and what they're proposing is, or actually, I'm sorry, the required setback is the blue line, and what they're proposing would be going up to the red line there.
This is the addition right there, must be.
And then this is what the front of the building will look like. And that's all I have, so I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Is the petitioner present? If you could come forward and state your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, I'm Phoebe with Willis Stady, 1247 4th Avenue Southeast.
And what would you care to add to the case?
Yeah, we are excited to be here to tell you about the project. I would add that we've personally been in the building for 25 years, and this is our first attempt and ability to really renovate and change the facility to meet the needs of our population. We provide the most nights of shelter in Lynn County, over 10,000 nights of shelter each year. And so what we're attempting to do with this facility is make it handicap accessible, add some space for people who are currently not able to find shelter. And so part of that is also opening the building up to having more lighting, more accessibility to the playground, some other key elements that I can go into. But we did discuss the design quite a bit up front as to why we would like to do what we're doing with it, to allow for just the most efficient use of space, to make it welcoming to up to 57 people each night that come through for temporary shelter. We do have our engineering team and our architect here in the audience if you have further technical questions on why it has to kind of look like this.
And from my knowledge of your organization, I mean, the location is extremely important to what you do.
Yes, definitely. We are really fortunate that we're close to several other social services, meal sites, food pantries, transportation, things like that are right on site. And luckily we didn't have to move in this process. We could accomplish all of our needs by expanding onto our adjacent lot.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board for the petitioner? Are there any objectors present? There are none. Any other further questions or discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve variance 024327-2017, citing not detrimental.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And whenever you're ready for the next.
I do too.
Okay. This variance request is a request to provide more than the maximum allowed parking at 1705 Centerpoint Road Northeast. And here's an aerial view of the property. And the parking expansion would happen between these structures here. Street view looking back, so this parking expansion would happen back where the trucks are. And here's our site plan. And council has adopted maximum parking requirements in an effort to keep hard surfacing down. And for the use here in the structures, 12 parking spaces would be required. And then at 120% of that, 14 would be the maximum. And the appellant would like to provide 15 extra spaces. And I believe has an agreement with, he also owns this building to the north, and there's going to be a shared parking agreement between the properties. So part of the spaces to the south would be used by this property. And that is what I have. So with that, I'll turn it back to the board.
Thank you. Is the petitioner present? Could come forward and state your name and address for the record, please.
Mike Esker, 4110 Whitewood Court, Northeast, Cedar Rapids.
What would you care to add to the case?
You know, it's surprised me that we actually had a maximum, so we got, you know, our, one or two spaces over, but that's understandable. Yeah, we have, actually, we've had issues in the past with the adjacent property with a shortage there and a couple of variants of requests as a shortage, which I think is more common. So this gives us a little more flexibility there and also provides for sufficient parking for the new proposed tenant for that office building. And it is in the back of the building, so in terms of, you know, kind of, I guess I'd say aesthetics, it's going to be hidden behind both buildings. So from an aesthetics point of view, trying to minimize any of that.
I will agree. I think this might be a first for asking for more parking than allowed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that's not the first, but it's the first time I've heard it. Any questions from the board for the petitioner? Are there any objectors present? There are none. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that variance 024320-2017 be granted for unique circumstances and not detrimental.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same side. Same sign. Motion carries.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is variance 0243-23-2017, John Felstead. This is for property at 2136 20th Street Northwest. This property is zoned R1 Single Family Residence Zone District. This is just a location map showing the property. This is the Ellis Golf Course, Zika Avenue, 20th Street, and then the location of the property on the west side of 20th Street. The applicant is looking at demoing an existing garage, which is in pretty bad shape, and building a new garage, 12,000 square foot in size. The house actually has a stucco exterior, and the applicant would like to deviate from the exterior design of the building and not have to do stucco, but he would do vinyl siding and a shingled roof, with the vinyl siding being the same color as the house. Stucco isn't something we see a lot of typically anymore. It's extremely expensive, and certainly for detached garages we don't see it. The garage will have a two-stall look from the street, and as I mentioned, they're going to match the colors of the existing house with the exterior materials. This is an aerial photo showing the house with the existing garage, which would be demoed. That would be one of the conditions, would be that they would have to get the necessary demolition permits and inspections, and they would also have to get the necessary building permits and inspections for a new garage, and also that the garage could only be used for the residents on the property's use, not for commercial. And obviously all driveways to the garage would have to be hard surfaced. This is just a street view showing the existing garage. The house is over here behind this tree. And then this is kind of a site plan. You can see that the garage somewhat is tucked behind the house, but it's actually longer than it is deeper, and it would have a two-stall garage look on the front of it. With that, that's all I have, and I'd turn it back over to the board.
Thank you. Is the petitioner present? If you would come forward to the podium and state your name and address for the record, please.
John Felstead, 2136 20th Street Northwest.
And what would you care to add to the case?
What I would like to do is just bring the property value up of my house and the surrounding areas, being I'm the oldest house probably there on 20th Street in that initial area right there. And with that, it would bring up the value of my property and the other properties around.
And currently, it looks like from the aerials that it's just a sort of an apron entry off the curb cut into, is that dirt or gravel?
It's all hard service.
Oh,
there,
okay.
All the way up. That won't be affected at all. I just would like to take down demo the old garage and then just replace it with a new one of the same size.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the
It'll
petitioner?
be limited to residential use, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Are there any objectors present? There are none. Any other questions or discussion from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend that variance 024323-2017 be granted, subject to the conditions of limited to residential use and securing all required permits.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Let me just add for compatibility purposes.
Still a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same side. Sign. Motion carries.
You're in trouble with that today.
It's a Monday.
This next item is a variance for property located at 2116 Sandalwood Drive Northeast. This is variance 024337-2017. The applicant is Stephen J. Bacon. The property is zoned R2 Single Family Residential. Currently, there's only a existing garage on the property. The variance request would include, being able to maintain that existing garage over the 180 days that the ordinance requires to get a principal structure constructed. They also are looking at a variance from the 25-foot setback to 21.5 feet, and that would only be if the new house that's going to be built on the lot would be attached to the garage which then makes the garage part of the principal structure, and then it would not meet that rear yard setback. If the house is constructed and not attached to the new garage, then that garage can have a greater setback because it's in a detached accessory building. And then finally, one of the conditions would be that a house would need to be constructed and a final certificate of occupancy would need to be granted by July 1st of 2018. This is just a location map showing the property. This is actually a good infill opportunity. Then this is a street view. There's a house over here. It's a driveway to the garage, and then there would be a house constructed behind this tree on this side of the existing garage. With that, I have nothing more to add, and I'd turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you. Is the petitioner present? If you could come forward to the podium here and state your name and address into the microphone for the record, please.
Stephen Bacon, 1009 10th Street, Northwest, Cedar Rapids.
Thank you. And what would you care to add to your case?
I think it was pretty well covered. If I attach a house to the garage, I will, the house in itself, the house proper, will meet the rear setback requirement, but obviously the existing garage, as it was stated, does not.
And one of the questions in our packet was the time to complete, and we were talking about, or it was the staff threw around a date of July 1, 2018. Does that sound reasonable?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions for the petitioner?
What happened to the house that was there at one point?
I don't believe there ever was a house there.
Yeah, I think what happened at one point was the house over here owned this lot, and so this garage was constructed, but the lots were never combined, and then they turned around and sold that lot.
Okay.
Are there any objectors present? There are none. Any other questions or comments from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve variance 024337. It's noted here as 207. I think it probably should be 2017. Okay.
We'll get that corrected in a minute.
Subject to the conditions noted, and I would say citing unique circumstances.
In the time period. through-
Yeah, it's subject to that.
Yep. Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, for our last two requests, we'll present them with one presentation, but it'll be two separate requests for two distinct lots. And this overall parcel is 1525 Hollywood Boulevard. Might look familiar. You've recently approved a conditional use for a daycare center in a former church. And now the request before you is a proposal to subdivide the westerly half, roughly half of the lot, into 4 additional lots with the intent of building 4 duplexes. And they're asking for a parking variance. They would provide 6 off-street parking spaces within garages, as opposed to the 8 that are required by code. So here we can see the church and the vacant portion of the westerly portion of the lot. Here's a view of this area from the street. And this is the proposed subdivision plat with the building, the duplexes drawn in. So we're requesting variances for the corner lots. The interior 2 duplexes would each unit would have a 2-car garage. On the corners, the larger unit would have a 2-car garage, and a smaller unit would have a 1-car garage. Oh, and this is going to require rezoning and plat approval by Planning Commission, and this will be headed to the February 23rd Planning Commission. So any actions that are taken today would be subject to successfully rezoning the site. So with today's discussions, we're not going to talk about the land use appropriateness. We'd like to focus on the question of off-street parking. And staff has received multiple objections from the neighborhood on this one concerning traffic. Some of the concerns are traffic related. And with that, I'll turn it back to the board.
Thank you. Is the petitioner present?
Doug Brain, 1540 Midland Court. One thing I'd like to add is it's reducing the parking, so we couldn't get another 2-stall garage on those end lots, and so we're asking for a reduction in the parking spots, because the only other way to remedy this would be to put concrete pad kind of on the towards the front of the house, and so it's going to add the hard surfacing, and there's already concerns about stormwater runoff. So it's also going to impact that by increasing the stormwater runoff.
What are the, and Dave may, or sorry, Vern may have said, or Dave, sorry, the number of bedrooms on the end units that are smaller?
2-bedroom. They're all 2-bedroom.
Okay.
complexes.
Any other questions from the board?
So, at least from what I understand, Dave, these are 2 new lots, 0.2 acres each.
Yeah, yes.
And where are the other? There's 1,
In
2,
between them.
3, 4. Those are the
No.
only ones along there,
North to
right?
south.
The other ones will have, each unit will have a 2-stall garage.
Okay. And so you have 4 lots. Could you change that to 3 lots and be in compliance?
The owner wants to do 4 lots, and right now it's a parking variance, so as far as the variance goes, we either get a reduction of the amount of parking, or he's gonna put a pad, and he can meet the requirement that way, and so he's just hoping not to put a concrete pad in the front yard.
And they could put a concrete pad in the
Yeah.
front yard?
Well, it would be in the side, the corner side, it would be beside the building.
It would be outside of the setback.
Yeah, like here and here. So it would end up being in the corner side yard, but not the front yard, and they could do that.
That's why we're hoping to get a variance as opposed to putting extra concrete in that area.
And then if they got the variance, then there'd be an additional car on the street.
Yeah. If they
Potentially.
if they actually required that need.
Yeah.
Yeah. Keep in mind that for a one-stall garage, we only count the garage stall space, because in residential situations, we only count the unimpeded spaces. In some circumstances in the core area, we allow you to count tandem spaces. So if this were being built in the core area, they could count the garage space and the driveway parking space in front of the garage. I would also point out that in most all zoning districts except for single and one and two family, we allow them to count on-street parking spaces towards their minimum required. In this case, we don't, although Lawrence is a 28-foot wide street, which does allow on-street parking on both sides of the street. So there is an opportunity for on-street parking in this area too, on Hollywood, Lawrence, or Arizona Court.
And they're all single-family residences around this? Is that, from I understood it correctly from you earlier?
That's correct. There's a school to the south, or to the north, Wright School, I believe it is. And then the rest of this area is pretty much single-family residential with the exception of the daycare center.
Are there any other questions for the petitioner? Are there any objectors present? Okay. When there are a lot of objectors, I don't know if people have discussed this ahead of time. Is there someone that would be perhaps a spokesperson that has some of the same, or are there different or unique objections from those here?
I think there may be 2 or 3 people who.
Okay, if whoever would like to approach first, and as I said in my opening remarks, we would like to just keep objections or any points to new objections. So if an objection is made and you have the same objection, we would ask that you just keep it to new objections. So if someone would like to come forward to the podium and state their name and address for the record.
My name is Chris Carmen. I live at 1622 Arizona Avenue Northeast. And I guess speaking on behalf of the neighbors, there's a lot of concern about the overall project. We recognize that we're not here today to address overall project, but
Correct.
In some ways I've sort of thought about this as lipstick and a pig. We object to the pig, and we also object to the lipstick. So I do have a handout that summarizes information. I can make one available too for minutes. I think all of us in the neighborhood either currently have children who attend Wright School or have had in the past, and that's been the case for me and my immediate neighbors. So what we're really concerned about in terms of today is the off-street or is the on-street parking issues. There are already many times, several times during the day when there's traffic snarls and while children are, walking to or from school. And you can see from the information that that there are 375 kids who go to Wright Elementary School, 56 employees. And then these are the 4 times during the day when there are particular problems with the parking in those areas. I don't know if it's possible to go back in the slides, but the photograph that was used of Lawrence Street is really fairly typical of these 4 times. What you don't see in the picture is cars lined up on both sides of Hollywood, usually along Council Street, and so it's dangerous. We're already concerned about safety for children, even with the current situation. But I think our real concern is with the loss of with the addition of 8 housing units on this one particular piece of property. There's going to be. I went through the information that Adam provided to us. We're not out to demonize him, but we are concerned. You can see that there's those 4 lots stretch 328 feet across. So that one lot is on one end, and then the other lot in question is at the other. So out of those 328 feet, potentially, if you were divided up now into 20-foot parking spots, right now there could be 16 parking spots on that side of the street. When you take the dimensions that were provided to us by Adam and you multiply them out, you can see that we're already going to lose 7 parking spots. So when you look at the picture, 7 of those cars that are currently occupied while they're waiting for their kids are going to be somewhere else in the area, creating more congestion and traffic. And but then with these variance requests, that could potentially cause us to lose 2 more of the on-street parking. And I think that whoever eventually occupied those units too would be surprised if they were promised off-street parking or on-street parking, and then they found that 4 times during the day, a typical day, they had no access to it. So those are really our concerns. I think that as we're sort of amateurs here. We don't do this for a living, and unlike what some people have said in other cases, we're not paid protesters. But so just in looking through the information that was available online, I took a look at the criteria, and it really seems to me like the request that's been made doesn't really apply to unique circumstances. Mr. Stratt has stated that they could comply with the code, and so it seems like granting a waiver in this case would probably be a precedent or weaken the code across the community. It's in his request essentially said it was based upon aesthetics or the look of the property rather than an unsolvable problem. We have runoff concerns too, but we think that these 2 slots are sort of a drop in the bucket, and they further compound the parking situation, which really makes it unsafe for young kids. So.
Okay, I think that was well articulated. Are there any other objections that do not deal with some of the traffic, the elimination of existing off-street parking, safety of children, and sort of that it is not a unique circumstance?
I'm pretty much going to hit on those same things.
Okay. Are there any other new objections to that? I saw a couple hands in the back. If you could state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Christy Ritchie. I live at 1533 Arizona Court Northeast. I'm going to try to touch on new subjects. I just want to first say that I feel like this is a potential variance on something that hasn't even been approved yet. The rezoning meeting is on the 23rd.
Which I just want to interrupt you. That's a great point. I just want to clarify for everyone, and staff, please correct me if I'm wrong. So whether or not the variance is approved, the owner still can go forward with that. So if the variance is approved, it is subject to that. So if the variance is approved and zoning is approved, it's approved. If the variance is approved and the zoning and rezoning and replatting is not, it's not.
Right.
Go ahead.
I
Thank
just
you.
kind of wanted to state that because it's tough to pull this one item out of the big picture.
Sure.
Along with that, the pad would solve this variance problem. However, it tags into our water runoff topic that would be in the rezoning issue. So the pad is not good in that situation, and the off-street parking causes the problems of, that Chris had mentioned. I'd also like to point out that when you're stopped at the stop sign at the corner of Arizona Court Avenue and Lawrence, when there's parking there, you cannot see to cross the intersection or to turn. That parking, I submitted some pictures. I hope that they were sent on to you. The home on the corner is currently a rental home and has several more cars than you would expect. One of them is parked there constantly. It moves from side to side just to follow the rules, but that home has many parked cars. And I'd like to state, if these homes would have increased number of cars for whatever reason, it doesn't just put one car in the street, it could put many. Our homes are starter homes. They're probably a bit smaller. So we fit more people into our homes. There's a family of 6 in a 3-bedroom home right across the street. That would put more cars than just what you're allotting. That area is used to cut through from the Center Point Road area to First Avenue. One of our council members even states that she uses that route. And so there's a lot of traffic going fast down that area because they think it goes through, but the court, however, does not. So they whip around the court and then go to turn left or right, which then those cars are there. Let's see. Just want to make sure. The school parking was mentioned. However, I'd like to state if these driveways are put in and cars are there because of the homes, it's just going to bleed out further and further, which is going to cause more congestion, affecting more people. That street, you say it's 28 feet. I don't know what's typical, but it's already down to a 1-lane street often, whether or not school is being in session or not. I tried to send some photos regarding that. So when your 2 cars are coming onto each other, you usually have to pull off to the side to let one or another through. I think that was all the new topics
Yep.
I had.
Thank you. Are there any other objections that have not already been raised? Yes, please. If you could state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is April Rottinghouse. I'm at 3929 Council Street Northeast. Obviously, I'm concerned about the loss in parking. The other thing that I was going to mention that I'm not sure you're aware of, there's a large project planned to update Oakland Road. I don't know if you can see this part, but it's going to cross where Hollywood and where Wright Elementary School are. That can start late 2018 or early 2019. So as soon as the construction's finished from this, then we're going to have continued additional traffic from the construction going on Oakland Road. So it's going to be an ongoing loss of parking and traffic concerns there.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to do this, are there any other new objections before we're going to let the applicant also have a chance to respond to those objections? Any other new objections? Step forward, please, or come forward to the podium and state your name and address for the record, please.
I just have a handout
Oh, okay.
for the neighbors. You want me to give all the information, I will.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Could the petitioner come forward and would they like to address any of the objections raised? Oh, okay.
Additional point, sorry. These are just maps of the area, and on the second page, you can see that on the second page, you can see that Lawrence Street is not only significant in and of itself, but in terms of children walking, that would be the feeder street for all the kids who live along Arizona Avenue, who live along Richmond Road, and who live along Keith Drive. So this goes beyond impacting the kids on one particular block. It impacts really all the kids who go to Wright Elementary from our immediate neighborhood. So I just
Thank
wanted
you.
to share that.
Would the petitioner like to come forward and address any or all of these objections? You could state your name and address for the record, please.
Yep. Hello, my name's Adam Stratt, at 1110 Dinah Court, Suite A in Hiawatha. I'm the proposed developer of this project. I guess just to briefly, I don't want to go in long detail. These objections, all of these things I looked at before we even designed this particular project. I understand that putting the driveways onto the street are going to lose some on-street parking. That actually is the reason for part of the design that I have, to keep the driveways together, to get longer spaces between them instead of having them spread out individually. That actually does create more parking on the street than if we were to spread them out. In regards to trying to get the two-car, I've tried everything I can think of to try and get the two-car on the one-stall unit on the end, just with the setbacks that are required from the side yards. These lots are not gigantic, but the buildings are much smaller on the lot than what would be allowed for that. I've been working with Vern over at the city. We looked at a variety of options on how to get this additional pad space on that one. We looked at doing a side driveway coming in, which is not allowed. And then we discussed doing the pad to basically the side of the building. My biggest concern, I guess, with that, and the reason I've gone with the variance, is the pad needs to be 9 by 19 feet. So that's going to go all the way to the building past the stoop. And then we still have to get the car to the pad. So we got to do then a driveway more or less from the pad to the driveway. So we're going to be paving a significant amount of that corner. Water is already a major concern with this project. We're trying to keep the stormwater management and the quality down to a minimum. This is also creates some difficulty because there is a 5-foot hill rise on the entire front of this property that goes across. So it would be, there's going to be some challenges to put the pad in there anyways. That's one of the reasons why the units are in a split level design with it. As far as the congestion is concerned, I completely understand that. I mean, I've taken my kids to school, and I know how busy it can get around schools and whatnot. There are no sidewalks whatsoever in this area, so I know the safety of the kids is my concern. I mean, that going into it. So we are going to be having that with it, which will get them off the street, which should help with some safety and some of the traffic. I know in other projects I've been involved with, sometimes by reducing the amount of cars that can park on the street actually will help, because it won't be slammed with cars down the entire street both ways. It'll help spread it out a little bit. I know that pushes it into other areas. But these end units are much, much smaller. It's got an oversized one-stall garage, still going to have a 25-foot driveway that, in all honesty, is going to be used for parking as well. With it, this is not going to be a large family that can go in this unit. It's just not big enough. These bedrooms are 9 by 10. The master is, it's not conducive. The square footage of the unit is pretty small for that reason. So it's going to be a single or a couple from that standpoint. So, and then as far as safety, as far as getting parked around the corner, the whole lot's going to get reshaped. So even with parking there, they're going to have a lot more visibility around both on the corner of Lawrence and Hollywood and Lawrence and Arizona Court. So that's my reasoning for coming.
Thank you.
for
Any
the-
questions from the board for anyone or any comments from the staff?
I guess there's been several comments made about the safety around the school. Has the school, I guess, come to you with safety concerns
No.
on this project?
I've reached out to the school. Nobody's gotten back to me on it. I've been reaching them we've had 2 neighborhood meetings. I've sent them letters, emails. I made phone calls over the last 45 days. I haven't got anything from the school. So, unfortunately, I guess I have not walked in there personally and knocked on the door. I could do that.
There are parents from the school represented here.
They were not notified about this. I've talked to the principal.
If your lots were larger, say you had 3 instead of 4, then it would be a non-issue, wouldn't it?
Theoretically, yes.
I mean, from the parking's perspective, subject to
from the parking perspective.
rezoning.
Right.
I then run into issues of financials then at that point.
These are the only duplexes in the area? Would be the only duplexes in the area?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, there'll be townhomes with them, so.
I mean, my initial concern is that in terms of compatibility or unique circumstances, is the real issue that the unique circumstances of this area are such that it's a residential area and not a duplex area. I mean, that's my concern, and I'm not sure that would support the variance request. Now, there are only 3 of us here, and 2 can pass it.
Sure.
I mean, but Todd, can you second a motion?
No,
Huh?
no, not that I'm aware of.
So in order to get to a motion for 2 to pass, there has to be a second, at least as I understand it. And so there is an option of deferring this till next month, where we'll have, or maybe have, 4 or 5 of us to make the decision, and you'll need 3. I'm just telling you kind of what I'm thinking.
Sure.
Otherwise, if it gets voted down, then
Then
it's the
it's
end.
subject to the pads.
Huh?
Then he can still do the site pads.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
can
not
still
the
do-
end of the project.
Subject to the zoning.
Yeah, I can still do the pad. It's just the pad, I guess, when I look at the grand picture of the project, the pad is, I guess, the variance is the best alternative to the issues that we have when I look at the whole picture.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm not opposed to this variance at all. I think it is compatible with the neighborhood. It is a residential neighborhood. These are residential townhomes. These are not 2, 3-story duplexes at all. Yeah, I'm saying, yeah, but there's also some 2-story homes in that area. Well, it is compatible with the neighborhood. It is a residential area, and these are residential townhomes.
Correct.
These are not multifamily apartment units of any significant level.
Yeah, we still have to
We're
go
not
through, we were here
discussing
for parking
rezoning,
spaces.
I just,
Yeah, as far as compatibility, I mean, we'll get to that when we get to the other meetings. I mean, I've spent a lot of time in the design, even with the reducing roof pitches and everything to match everything in the area. So I got months of work in the actual design, which will come to a different meeting, obviously.
I mean, I think on the issue of the parking, it's just a function of, how the city ordinance counts a spot, as Vern indicated, is the garage stall. If the variance was voted down, the petitioner has another option, whether that's ideal or not, and it's not under the purview of this board, and so you don't have to certainly do what I might suggest, but if the people here and you collectively may want to discuss this, because it seems like it'll really be up to the Planning and Zoning Commission if it goes forward or not whether you get a one-spot variance or not. That's just my take, and it seems like there's a lot of good positions on both sides. So I don't think that the parking variance makes or breaks the issue. It seems like a zoning commission issue to me.
Yep. Do you want to table it?
Personally, I don't see a reason to table it. I guess I think it's a legitimate
Okay.
request. I don't think I'm going out of line.
That's fine. And I just, to Mr. Vernon's point, the only thing I would say is that, I don't know if you want to see about getting the rezoning done first, table it and come back, only because if it dies for lack of a second, then it's the same as denial. And so that would prevent, I think it's a 12-month period. So I think that's all he was trying to say, is that between there being more members and between you knowing if you get the rezoning, that might save you some time ultimately.
Yeah, I guess, like anything, time is always of the essence when we're dealing with projects. So, I got, I think, another 2 months or so just even before we get to through the rezoning and whatnot. I guess I understand where you guys are coming from as far as wanting to delay it. I guess I would say just go ahead and take a vote.
That's up to you. Is there any further discussion from the board or any staff comments? Yeah. Certainly. Thank
I
you.
think you should table it, because if you do get it approved through rezoning, then you can't come back to us and ask for the variance for 12 months.
You'll be forced to do the extra pad. period.
Yes.
Or if you come back and you get the rezoning, you can come back next month, and if there are 5 people here and 3 of them say, yes, we'll grant it, you don't have to do the pad. You see what I'm saying? Otherwise,
I think you should table it. It's too.
It's up to
Yeah,
him.
you have
It's up to the
nothing to lose.
petitioner.
I guess that's the third time. We can table it if that's what we want to do. It's fine. I understand.
pardon me?
We can table it.
Okay, I would move we table it till next month.
Second.
Before we discuss that, when is the rezoning meeting?
The 23rd.
I think it's 23rd. 23rd.
February 23rd is the Planning Commission.
Okay. Motion and a second. Any further discussion to table both variance 024348-2017 and variance 024349-2017 for next month's meeting? Seeing none, all in favor of tabling these two variants, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same side. Sign. The variances are tabled. Thank everyone for their comments on these two matters.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, we were given 3 items that,
Yep, I will give those to Danny.
perfect, thanks.
Okay.
He's got them.
He's got
Yep.
them.
I don't think there's any other new business. No old business.
Move we adjourn?
That's a motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you.